Hello and welcome to the Tool Assisted Podcast. Today is the 17th of February 2019, and today we're talking about Grunty's Revenge with Blaze and Go-Go. I'm going to have some video clips in this for the YouTube version, and it will hopefully be up in audio-only form as well. You can check the description for that if you're on YouTube. If there is a video clip, I'll play this sound in advance so that you know. Without further ado, let's get started. So my first guest here is Blaze, and tell us a bit about yourself, Blaze.
Well, I'm a speedrunner, I guess, and also a tasser. I'm a big fan of the Banjo series, but I kind of focus more on the smaller, less popular Banjo games. Second place in Grunty's Revenge, and I've got the record in Banjo Pilot because people love Banjo Pilot.
Oh, that's the best one.
And also, my first task that I made was also Grunty's Revenge, and it helped me with my real-time runs. I found a couple major time saves that let me improve that run even more. I've also done a lot with the trading card game on Game Boy, which is a great run, in my opinion. It's got lightning fast menuing. It's like the fastest. You can't even watch it unless you've run it yourself, practically, because you won't be able to follow what's going on. It's crazy, but super fun to play. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, very good. So if you haven't seen the trading card game, Taz, listener, I would highly recommend it. It is pretty crazy to see because there's no sort of artificial delays on the menu. You can do them very fast.
Oh yeah, the task is 1/3 tutorial and 2/3 the entire game.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So Blaze, how did you get into Banjo-Kazooie, the series as a whole?
Getting it as a Christmas gift, I think, pretty much. Like, probably 1999 or 2000, like 5 or 6 years old.
Oh, nice.
I never even heard of it. But, I mean, obviously I didn't. How would I have even heard of it that young? But my dad did his research, and I really, really enjoyed the game. I wish I could go back and experience that first time again, you know? I definitely had some trouble with the notes, I'm sure. I don't think I beat the game for a couple years, but probably that 8-10 note door was tripping me up. But yeah, it was a great game. Loved Tooie as well. Loved Grunty's Revenge as a kid. I think I was kind of mediocre in Banjo Pilot, but you know. But yeah, it's just stuck with me as probably my favorite gameplay of all is just the N64 original Kazooie. Just a really solid, well-made, well-designed game.
I would have to agree with you there, and I think my experience of Banjo-Kazooie is very similar to that. How did you get from just playing casually to speedrunning? What runs got you into speedrunning?
Well, actually, Banjo-Kazooie 100% was the first speedrun I ever saw, I think, on SDA, the old run by Marshmallow. David Gibbons, I think, right? Marshmallow. I think that was the first speedrun I ever saw. And the idea of it was amazing to me back then. The idea of like, wow, he sat and played this game all the way through for 3 hours straight. That's crazy. I could never do that. And nowadays, it doesn't seem like that crazy of a thing. You've got all these Banjo-Tooie runners doing 4-hour runs all the time. But it was different back then. A lot of speedruns were segmented, so the idea of doing it in one sitting was crazy. So then, a long time later, Banjo-Kazooie 100% was the first speedrun I did. For the there was a big race organized, the Big Banjo Brawl, and that was I really wanted to participate. I'd been watching speedruns a lot over the last year on Twitch, and I felt like if there was one game that I could do somewhat competently, it would be Banjo-Kazooie because like I already know where everything is. I really have it in my head. And I managed to get like sub 4 hours, I think, in that race, which is pretty good, in my opinion. And it kind of made me realize I actually do have the potential to do this, to be decent at a game. So from there, I knew I didn't want to put a ton of time into Banjo-Kazooie because I'd never be that good at it. So I randomly thought to check out the GBA one, Grunty's Revenge, because it's much smaller. Smasher had the record at the time. And I thought that it'd be more fun to compete in something where I have the potential to maybe get the record. And I ended up getting the record, so that was cool.
Nice. Congrats.
Yeah.
And where did you first find out about tazzing? How did you get into that?
I'm not really sure what the first task I saw was. I can't remember that. But I'm sure I just learned about it as I was looking up. I probably saw some crazy stuff like the classic Super Mario Brothers 3 on YouTube. That's probably a pretty basic one. And like Super Mario Bros. 1 tasks, Super Mario 64 Zero Star, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're very popular. Cool, and yeah, from there it would be a pretty straightforward idea to go into Grunty's Revenge tazzing, I'd imagine, because you'd been running it.
Yeah, and it didn't already have one. It did have a 100% on YouTube, but it wasn't on task videos, and it was super old. So I thought it'd be fun to do it because no one's done it. Get it on there. Don't have a competition, so it's not like I'll be worse than the existing tasks. And it's pretty simple movement, too. There's nothing that crazy. There's no crazy glitches, really.
Very good. Yeah, it is a very good game. For tazzing, I'd imagine, as well. I'm glad GBA emulation was good enough that you could do it at that time, as well.
Yeah.
And Go-Go is the other guest for today, who is also a Grunty's Revenge tazzer. How are you today, Go-Go?
I'm doing fine. What about you, 8-Bit?
Oh, I'm doing great, thanks, Go-Go. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So, what my introduction to speedrunning has been somewhat recent. It was at around like 2014 or so. I was playing Mario 64 casually with one of my friends talking over Skype, and I was talking about how I was beating the game, and he was like, "But did you know that you could beat the game with 16 stars?" I was like, "No, that's not really that." From what I could remember, it was only 70 stars, and there was no way to beat that. And then he showed me a speedrunning tutorial. That was the first thing that he saw on YouTube. That was basically a 16 stars tutorial, and I was like, how is this even possible? I didn't know that it was even possible to break games at the time. It was literally the first speedrun that I saw. It was literally a speedrun tutorial that was still in under an hour or something, but the person was explaining it well. And so I tried it, and I managed to beat the game in 16 star in about like 50 minutes or so, because I was really intrigued by that. And then after that, I learned a couple of other categories in that game. In Mario 64, I learned 70 stars. Much later, I learned 120 stars. I I wouldn't say that I'd be among the top runners since my current PB is still a 103, and I don't think it was even that good at the time. But it's a good experience for a first speed game. But then I forgot who I met, but somebody hosted K-Area, which used to be the Mario Galaxy speed world record holder, and man, I really liked that game. The speedrun looked cool, even though it has lots of cutscenes. But after a while, I got among the top runners in that game because I had more experience with speed running in general. And then one day I was browsing YouTube videos, and I found a speed run of Banjo-Tooie by Hyper Resonance 92, which you might know from who is the person that made the first Tool-Assisted podcast. And I was like, wow, this is the game of my childhood, Banjo-Tooie, in under 3 hours. And I looked at it, was like, wow, that game is really broken compared to the other two games that I played. Like, Mario games are not really reputed for their insane glitches outside of maybe BLJs, but Banjo-Tooie was amazing, and that's basically how I managed to join the BK community. But I only watched this speedrun in like 2015, and from what I can remember, it took me like 6 months until I managed to find the strength to actually learn about the speed run of this game, because it's a 3-hour run, no DCW, and it has lots of glitches, and I basically joined the community at that time, and now we're in 2015, and the only games that I had been playing so far for the Banjo-Kazooie series is Banjo-Kazooie, which I've only played casually, and there's Banjo-Tooie, which I had drawn. But when it stayed there for a while, but it wasn't until 2017 that I actually got interested in that, in Grunty's Revenge. At the time, I didn't know that there were actually 5 games in the BK franchise. I only thought that there were BK, BT, and then Nuts and Bolts. But I only had played the 2 on the N64 games. But it was when I checked on speedrun.com that I saw, wow, 5 games. I wonder what these look like. And then I found Blaze world record of that game after he had done the task. And I really the game looked cool, and I actually played it, and I was like, man, this game really feels great to control. I wonder if I should play it, if I should speedrun it. And it turns out that 3 weeks after I had played the game casually for the first time, I started speedrunning it. And I would say that it all... After that long introduction, I finally had found a game that I really liked, because I don't know, the movement feels great, and I feel like I had a really good challenge of beating Blaze world record, because the world record was considered a god run, and it really took a while. I remember that I got like a 47 in any percent. I was like, wow, man, how does he have a 45? and then after that, I really thought that I would be done with this category, so I switched to 100%, and this is where I started to actually find time saves in that category, since there was no task of 100%. I feel like the route was slightly less optimized due to the fact that there were no perfect run, if I could say that, and there hasn't been any. I wouldn't say any, but there was nowhere near enough findings compared to the any percent category, and through finding a lot of optimizations, I finally managed to get my first wall record in this game, and also breaking the sub 1 barrier, saving about 2 minutes over the previous wall record.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And then after that, I told myself, maybe I should try to beat the any percent record too. And it really was not easy. I basically included pretty much all the test straps were available at the time that were really difficult to pull off, and I really tried to get a run out of it, and I managed to break the any percent barrier by beating Blaze's perfect run. It was really good, and I'm kind of sad that I had beaten this wall record after that, because my run was not good, because I knew that I had about like 30 to 40 seconds of time saves due to really hard strategies, but I only managed to save like 20 seconds over that. So yeah, that's basically my introduction for this game, if I could say that.
That's very good, and I'm very interested to hear that you didn't have that game growing up, actually. I thought that you would have.
Yeah, I really I really only recently picked up the game, and over a lot of practice and determination, I managed to get a good run out of it.
Very good. Yeah, it definitely takes that, and I'm glad that you had that reference of Blaze's run and Taz to go off of as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really definitely, I wouldn't say the developing his run easier, but I feel like it made it possible.
Yeah. So, you ran Grunty's Revenge RTA for a while. What inspired you to pick up Tazzing it?
When I first got my hands on a Taz tool, because I had never done that before, it wasn't really to actually optimize the game. I was simply like trying to get some of the really hard strats off that I wasn't able to get at the time, and to actually find setups using the Taz tools. And that's basically how I gained experience with that. But then I told myself, there is no task for the 100% category of this game. And so, since I knew that I had somewhat the skills to do that, I basically made a practice task by testing some meme category that we have in the GR community, and then I started just to give me a practice of just optimizing movement and getting a flow of it. And then after that, I started working on my tasks.
Very good. So you're working on 100% Taz right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm about halfway done.
Oh, fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
So, listeners might be wondering, if they haven't played Grunty's Revenge, what is Grunty's Revenge actually like? So we've alluded to it being another Banjo-Kazooie game, so you might be imagining, well, it's like a 3D platformer. That's not quite the case. So Grunty's Revenge was released on Game Boy Advance. I forget exactly what year it was. It was mid-2000s, I think. 2003, 4, something like that.
It was after the Microsoft buyout, because it's published by THQ. But they were developing it beforehand.
Yeah,
I forget what year.
I think Rare was trying to develop a Banjo game on the Game Boy Color even before that. Probably before the buyout.
It started as Game Boy Color, which would have been like Pocket Tales and Perfect Dark, I guess, but they delayed it.
Yeah, so what Grunty's Revenge ended up being was like an isometric platformer. Now, in my opinion, it's a really good game. It's a little bit shorter than the main series, but it makes up for it with really good controls, and it's just fantastic for Game Boy. I think if it had come out on the SNES, it would be considered one of the greatest games of all time, in my opinion. Would you guys agree with this, or not?
I think it's definitely a good Game Boy game. I can't think of any other... I mean, it's kind of a 3D platformer. I mean, you do have 3... since, you can jump. It's definitely a good platformer for the Game Boy Advance. It definitely is a bit short. They crunched it a little bit at the end. Like, there were supposed to be 6 worlds, but the last 2 got merged into one. Just kind of turned it into like a fire/ice world, actually. But it's a good game. I don't know.
Go, what do you think of it casually?
I want to say that there were not a lot of bad things about this run, about the game. I want to say that the game, even though the game is an isometric view, the level design is actually well made to accommodate for that. Like there's one node behind a statue at one point that you can literally not see, but I think it's the only collectible in the game that it's just really hard to see. Also, the platforming is actually well made. There's not a whole lot of platforming that you actually need to do straight vertically, which is what basically the axis where it's really hard to judge the depth of things.
So there are some things that they did a little bit wrong with the isometric viewpoint, but overall you thought it was pretty good?
Yeah, it definitely was good. The music is also great. It really reminds me of the first 2 Banjo games.
Yeah,
especially Spiller's Harbor. Everyone loves Spiller's Harbor.
Yeah, that
music's
is awesome. So I think, I reckon if it had come out in 1992 or something, it would have blown people's minds. But while it may not have been the best game of all time, I think we can probably all agree that it was very underrated. And, flew under the radar a bit, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if more people knew that this game existed, it'd be a bit more popular.
Yeah, and there was another rare GBA game. Saberwolf is also, I think, really good and probably even more underrated.
Oh, I'll have to give that a try, actually. Never heard of that one.
Yeah, it has an isometric world map, but that doesn't really matter. The main gameplay is like 2D platforming, and you can place animals in the level to help you out. Like there's a spring animal, and there's a explode animal, and an invincibility animal, and so you have to use those to get through the level, since all you can do is run and jump.
Interesting. Yeah, that's definitely worth trying, I reckon. So, let's move on to Grunty's Revenge Tazzing. So there's a little bit of history in this game. Blaze, you mentioned that there was a Taz. I think that was by Ryuto in 2010.
Yeah, Ryuto. I'm pretty sure he's the one that did the Brain Age tasks, right? I think so.
Maybe.
Which is probably... Yeah, he is. So that one's probably very well known. You know, the one with all the drawings that get read as numbers in Brain Age.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that Taz as well. It's a very good watch.
But yeah, so he made a 100% Grunty's Revenge task. I think it was like from 2010 or something. And that's actually the first known speedrun anything of Grunty's Revenge that we know of. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So the fact that there were like no reference at all at this time, since the first speedrun of this game came out, and the first real-time run came out in like 2012 in some speedrun lives race or something.
Yeah, Burned Goat seems to have been the first runner, and a few of his friends, I guess.
It's pretty rare for a Taz to come before the RTA speedruns, historically.
Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah.
So, what was that Taz like? Was it fairly well optimized, or was it just lacking some glitches? Or
There were optimized. I haven't watched it since I made my tests, so I don't quite remember. I do know he wasn't using Talon Trot too much. He did think that optimal roll jumping would be faster than having to enter Talon Trot, but that turned out to be not the case. Like, roll jumping has a slower speed than Talon Trot, so it's worth the animation usually.
just like Banjo-Kazooie?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm not sure what else was unoptimized.
For some of the levels, the route was completely different due to the fact that I don't actually remember, but I do. The first level that comes to my mind is actually the last level, Freezing Furnace, where the level is quite different compared to what we do now in runs.
Okay. Yeah, and because it's a 3D platformer and so open-ended, you do have those routing options, and you can never be 100% sure that your route is the best route, I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he ever intended to submit it, so he probably didn't optimize it too much. It was just probably more of a proof of concept.
Exactly. And something that is worth stressing is in 2010, even if he wanted to super duper optimize it, he wouldn't have had the tools to do so. So for 2010, definitely. It was probably a fantastic Taz.
Yeah, I could not make a task like that in 2010 for sure.
Yeah.
He was very skilled with what he had, because he did like a lot of tasks, I think.
So after that, there was a low percent LOTAD in 2014 by QQRef. QQWRef.
Yeah, QQRef's fine. Yeah, that came about because at that point I was running the game. I'd found a few good ways to shorten some jiggies. Like, I found, I call it a Talon wrap, which is just you Talon trot jump and then rat-a-tat wrap, and throughout the rat-a-tat wrap you are still moving at Talon trot speed, and so this lets you get way more horizontal distance than was intended, and so that let you skip the platforms. It lets you skip some platforms that you turn on. They're supposed to move around. You can just leave the platforms in their default spot and jump to the jiggy. You can not use shock spring pads in one spot. You can just manage to jump from a high spot to where you were supposed to shock spring to. And another thing that I found was that you don't need fire eggs to complete the game, because the fire eggs were only used to melt an ice block covering a shock spring pad, and there was a way to jump where you didn't need to use that shock spring pad. So Fire Egg skip became a thing. But in the final boss, Klungo can spawn enemies that can only be beaten with fire eggs. And you have to beat those enemies to beat Klungo. So there was a 25% chance that your run could actually be completed if you skip fire eggs. And so that was terrible, but it inspired him to do a low percent that skips fire eggs.
Okay.
That's the story behind that.
So, about the talon trot jumping, how does that work to get the extra distance? Do you have to do anything fancy or just peck out of the talon trot?
The only thing that's special is you can't change direction once you've started the rat-a-tat rap. And that's a common theme in this game, is that if you change directions in midair, unless you do a talon trot, when you jump in talon trot, you can change directions no problem. But if you're just Banjo and you change directions in midair, you lose like all of your speed. And so if you change directions after you start the rat-a-tat rap, you'll lose a ton of speed and basically just plummet. But that's the only caveat, really.
Okay, very interesting. I'm surprised that they didn't catch that in making the game. Okay, so 2015 came along, and you made your any percent Taz Blaze. So what sort of improved here from Rito's Taz?
Well, I was using Taz Studio at that point. I'd tried making one beforehand, actually, just in Visual Boy Advance, and I actually got stuck at climbing in Cliff Farm, because climbing is actually there's a lot of different ways you can climb, and the thing about climbing is jumping. The initial height you get when jumping is more than you get from just climbing normally. So you want to start a jump and then reattach yourself to the ladder and start another jump and reattach and do that all the way up. And that's really tricky because of momentum and acceleration. Like, if you're climbing up, you have momentum towards the ladder, so it's hard to jump off. And then, yeah, so it was a mess. And I just gave up. I couldn't keep track of what I'd tried and what was faster when I was using Visual Boy Advance. And so later, I tried Task Studio in BizHawk, and its branches system really helped with keeping track of, like, okay, this is the best height I've gotten yet, and this is the inputs that I did to get it. I can see them in the piano roll. I know how many frames I held down or held A, etc. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, Taz Studio is really amazing for tazzing. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's tazzing Hyper. Alright, so...
I mean, it's not as good for analog, but it's still good.
Well, I do analog on Taz Studio, like I did the Crash 3 Taz in Taz Studio, but I understand how it can be not appealing for 3D.
Well, that you're just going like max left, max right, max left, max right, right?
Yeah, but I also did do Banjo in Taz Studio, a bit of Banjo-Kazooie. Not that I have a published Taz of that, but and from what I remember, you used Taz Studio for Banjo-Kazooie as well, Blaze?
Yeah, I did use it for the challenges.
Haha.
And it was good. It took some getting used to, but I think I definitely did better than I would have without it. But analog tassing in general is miles harder than just 8-way D-pad, for sure.
Definitely, yeah. So, with your Grunty's Revenge Taz, I'm sure you found some general glitches and optimizations overall. Can you tell us a little bit about super jumps?
Yeah, super jumps are basically the only way that I found that lets you reach speeds higher than you're supposed to, which is always a good thing. Aside from, I did some damage boosting as Banjo before I learned roll, because walking as Banjo is super slow, and so enemy knockback is slightly faster, but obviously the positions have to work out. It's not super ideal. Once you learn roll, you kind of stop doing knockback. And so then once you learn Talon Trot, that makes movement way easier. And I didn't know it at the start, and it's the biggest improvement that the task could have, is making more use of super jumps. But I found out that basically if you jump over water, especially if you jump as late as you can, like you're on the ground, your shadow is practically over the water, and then you initiate a jump, your speed increases for some reason above what it should be. And if you change direction as soon as you start that jump, like I mentioned how changing directions in midair can make you decelerate. When you do it on a super jump, it makes you accelerate. It's like if you were just holding right, you would slowly decelerate back to your normal speed. But if you let go of your inputs or change direction, you're not capping yourself at Talon Trot speed, and the game just kind of keeps accelerating you for a little bit. It does eventually taper off, but changing directions every other frame actually helps keep you at the high speed. Because it's like, if you keep doing that, it keeps starting to decelerate you, but it never really gets going, I guess. So there's some parts in the tasks where I'm rapidly flicking up, right, up, right, up, right every other frame, and it looks pretty cool, and it's actually the fastest way to travel.
Okay. And this isn't just water. You can do it over like lava and hurty water and stuff like that as well, can't you?
Yeah, anything where if you land in it, Banjo starts swimming, even if it's harmful. Like in Banjo-Kazooie on N64, like the swamp water doesn't make you swim, but the Freezeezy Peak icy water does make you swim. The icy water is actually water. I guess that's the difference. But yeah, any water that makes you swim, even if it's actually oil or acid or lava, works for it.
And one thing that I'd love to add is when you go at full Talon Trot speed, you go at about but at exactly 2.5 pixels per frame. But if you do one super jump, it can go as high as about 3.4 pixels per frame. But that's not it. Once you land off of a super jump, you could actually do one more super jump before you lose all your speed, and so you would be able to stack actually the speed boost that you get from every super jump that you do in a row.
Yeah, if you manage to land like right next to another body of water that you can do it on, which is kind of tricky to do, especially if you've got notes you have to collect that are obviously not next to the water. It can be difficult, but did come into play, especially in Freezing Furnace. There's a part with a big body of lava, and I was able to jump over the lava, land on a thin pipe, and then jump again over the lava, and that's actually the thumbnail for the task. And I think you have a clip of that.
Yeah, played that clip just a little bit before. So the viewers will have seen that just before. It's a very good section of the TAS, I reckon.
Yeah, I think that's the best super jump I have in the any percent TAS, for sure. It's the best case of chaining them. The intro to Freezing Furnace, getting to Grunty Industries, also has some good chaining off of a bunch of little islands. Because once I'm in Freezing Furnace in any percent, I don't care about notes anymore because I'm skipping fire eggs. I'm not sure if Go-Go will have that good of chaining because he actually has to get the notes on the main path, so I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not at this point in the test, so we'll see.
Maybe on the way out, at least.
With these super jumps, you're building up a lot of speed. Do you reckon you would be able to clip if you had enough speed anywhere, or not really?
That's a good question.
I would say yes, but clipping wouldn't do anything. Because for some reason, when you're out of bounds in this game, you actually get blocked by some invisible walls at some points, and it makes it so that you're really restricted to what you can do while out of bounds. It's not fully clear as to what you can do, as there's only a handful of places in the game where it's actually possible to clip.
Yeah, and I think if you're like completely out of bounds, you're just completely stuck. The clips that we have are like getting inside like a ramp. Like you're supposed to be on the ramp, but you can end up in instead, and like you can't really do anything aside from like you could jump and clip back onto the ramp. Unfortunately, that's really all we have. There is a potential for entering Freezing Furnace without opening it, because it's definitely maybe possible. Maybe you could clip through the red barrier that stops you from entering levels you haven't opened with Jiggy Wiggy. And you can build up speed at Freezing Furnace because there's water there, and there's also ice surrounding the entrance, which kind of keeps your momentum better than non-ice. That's about the only thing maybe you could clip through, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal because you'd still have to open Freezing Furnace before you can open the final boss. So I don't think it'd even save a trip. No, it might save a trip to Jiggy Wiggy. Yeah, because you opened Bad Magic Bayou and Spiller's Harbor together, right? I think so.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably would save a trip, but you'd still have to see the animation of it getting opened later.
Yeah, so unless you could clip into like the final bus area, then it wouldn't be useful.
Yeah, and there's no water there. There's no theoretical way to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and let's not forget that the loading zone that leads to the final bus is situated really high up in the air.
Yeah, it's the highest height like of anything. You have to shock spring to it. So yeah, there's not much there to work with.
Oh, that's so weird. They must have known.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Blaze, I think you had egg knockback in your Taz. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's like the only other glitch, really. It's kind of weird. So in this game, like if you roll into an enemy, they'll get damaged and you'll get knocked backwards, which is pretty typical. It'd be weird if you just went through them. Well, you go through them if you kill them, but if they aren't dead, you get knocked back. And the same goes for rat-a-tat rapping. But if you shoot an egg at them, obviously you don't get knocked back. That'd be weird. But if you shoot an egg at an enemy and then exit egg firing mode, it's like in this game, to shoot eggs, you kind of go into the what's the name of it? Like Breagle. I forget what the name of it is in Tui.
Breagle Blaster.
Yeah, Breagle Blaster. You basically go in a Breagle Blaster mode where now pressing B shoots an egg, and you can exit that mode by crouching. So if you exit the egg firing mode after firing an egg at an enemy, when it collides with the enemy, you get knocked backwards as if you'd rolled into them. And The only useful application of that is that getting knocked backwards gives you a little vertical distance. And that vertical distance, combined with being at the top of a flap flip, a high jump, can allow you to reach platforms that you were supposed to shock spring to. Like the shock spring height is barely more than a flip plus a knockback, and the platforms, they aren't at the maximum height of the shock spring. They're a little further down. So you can just barely get on a couple platforms. And the main usefulness of it is in the final boss, where the final boss is 3 phases. And the only thing keeping you from advancing phases is that once you beat that phase, a shock spring pad turns on. And that lets you reach the quiz for that phase. And you beat the quiz and you move on to the next phase. So you can shoot an egg at the boss and get the knockback and reach the quiz without having to beat the phase. And so I was able to do that once I realized, I was playing around with in Bad Magic Bayou, trying to be on the platform and also have him on the platform and be in Talon Trot, because there's no way to do that. Like the normal way to beat the boss is to use Pack Whack, because Pack Whack doesn't knock you back. But I wanted to be in Talon Trot, so I thought, what if I shoot an egg at Klungo and then I'm in Talon Trot on the pad? But then I learned, if I do that, I get knocked backwards and that exits me out of Talon Trot. But then, once I was at the final boss, I remembered that, and I thought, what if I use that to get the little extra height? I think that's actually, we should talk about the old quote-unquote task strat that was in Ryudo's tasks, because that's there was a way to skip phase 1 of the final boss as early as 2010, and it was called the task strat, and that's the main thing that stuck from Ryudo's tasks for a while in real-time runs. And it was another way of getting knockback to skip a phase.
Okay, so how does that work?
Basically, Grunty has 3 attacks, and she has 9 health. So once you get her down to 6 health, she does an attack where she flies into the air, flies over to you, and then falls on top of you. And so the strat was just to time a flap flip so you're at your maximum height of the flip when she lands on you, and then you get knocked backwards onto the quiz platform. And so that was there as early as 2010. That's the first major skip of the game, and that was quite doable in real time. You just have to time it with visual cues, because she always flies at you at the same speed. So that was a good way to skip most of the first phase. And so with that on my head, in my tasks, I realized I have an on-demand way to get knocked back. That's exactly what we needed in the boss. But now I can do it when she's at 9 health, and I can do it in the Klungo fight as well. So that was super good to realize. And then I was able to also apply the new task strat, guess if you want to call it that still, to the real-time runs, although it's a little slower and harder to do it in real time than in the tasks, obviously.
Yeah, so you skipped Grunty's phase with this knockback, which the viewers sort of seen a little bit earlier. You've also skipped Klungo's phase. And so
now we just need to skip the 3rd phase.
Yeah, if only we could skip the 3rd phase. So Grunty skip and Klungo skip, very, very similar glitches. What about the RTA? How do RTA runners sort of do the Klungo skip?
Yeah, so the thing about the skip is eggs. The eggs can't collide with Grunty and Klungo if they're off screen. And since you're flipping at the top of the screen and they're at the bottom, they're definitely off screen. But the egg can collide with their shield. Like for most of the fight, they're shielded and you can't damage them, and they only come out of their shield after they do some pattern. That's how it works. Like Klungo in Tui, really. He's shielded and then he takes it down because he's dumb. Like, if you just left the shield up, I couldn't beat you. But anyway. So with Grunty, she's stationary while her shield's up. And, or no, she's stationary when her shield's down. When you can attack her, she's standing still. And then once her shield goes back up, she charges at you. So it's really easy to position her, because all she does in her first phase is she runs at you until she hits a wall. So the setup is just, you bring her to the top, and then bring her to the bottom, and after the third charge, she stands there vulnerable. And you can set up the shot so that your egg collides with her as soon as she starts moving towards you again and her shields go up. It's really easy, even though in my 100% time, I got it second try, because that's embarrassing.
Oh, dang.
But Klungo is way harder because his shields are only up very briefly. When his shields are down, he moves around randomly. And to have enough time to shoot the egg and exit egg firing and do the flip and be at enough height, you really need to be at the top, and he needs to be pretty close to the bottom of the arena. And so since he moves around randomly and then he stops in place with his shields up, if he stops anywhere except the bottom, you can't get the skip. So there's a random element to it, unfortunately. And in the tasks, you don't see that because he starts the fight with his shield up very briefly, and there's just enough distance and time to shoot an egg at him and flip before he starts moving around. But it's barely real-time possible. I think Gogo's gotten it. I don't know if he's gotten it in a run.
Yeah, I still go for it in runs.
Yeah, it's worth going for it because you might get hit, but you have one opportunity and you can go for it, but you probably won't get it because the timing is just too tight. He starts the fight kind of 75% up in the arena, and it's not quite enough frames to exit to do all that inputting and get enough height.
I timed like the window to actually do the trick in runs using the way that the task does it, and there's about 3 or 4 frames of leniency with all the inputs that you can do. So
like combined?
Yes, exactly.
Oh dear.
So you've got crouching, L, B, enter egg mode, B, fire egg, L, uncrouch, A, flip. You also be like, yeah, that's a bit much.
Oh.
Yeah, but the thing is that it completely removes the RNG of Mumbo moving, not Mumbo, Mongo moving around the room, and this is what makes me do it, because this strat sucks. Safer strat.
Can you tell us a little bit about the safest strat, Gogo?
Yeah, I mean, the safest strat is basically what Blaze
The
was
safest strat is learning fire eggs and just beating him normally. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about the safer strat where you just wait for Congo to move around and hope that he goes further back into the room. And
just
that's
the normal way of doing it.
Yeah, that's the normal way. And I really hate it for the fact that it has RNG in it. So I said, you know what? I don't want to suffer from this RNG anymore, so I'm gonna learn the task cap.
But have you actually nailed it in a run?
5 times so far.
5 times?
Yeah.
Oh. Wait, with the 3-4 frame leniency?
Yeah.
I see, so that's why he has the record now.
Very good.
Like I can't do that.
Yeah, it really is a tough strat. Like, if I had to guess, like, back when I was running this game, I would practice this trick pretty much an hour a day, just because the inputs are so hard to get. Because if you do the inputs too slow, you don't have enough height. But if you press the inputs too fast, one of your inputs simply doesn't count.
Yeah, the crouching is really annoying because you can't actually egg fire or you're finished crouching. Like, there's a weird delay. You can't just go L one frame and then B the next frame. Like, it won't do it.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Something I forgot to ask you too is when you're running RTA, do you do it on console or emulator?
Me?
Both.
I do it on console.
I since I'm playing on emulator, I actually play on keyboard, actually, not a controller, simply because I prefer to actually use individual keys to press every direction on the D-pad as opposed to a joystick.
And I am a bit salty about that still, but I've said someday I'm going to mail him my Game Boy player and he has to beat my records on it. Someday. Like, I believe he's better than me, but there's that inkling of keyboard advantage that I don't know.
I mean, I've been able to do all the tricks using an Xbox controller.
Yeah, and you have great TUI times, and I suck at TUI, so you're definitely good with a controller. But yeah, I really prefer records to be on console.
Yeah,
but that's me.
I understand that, but Game Boy Advance is hard as well. Not a lot of people have Game Boy players.
Yeah, it's not super cheap to get into. Yeah, I happen to have a Game Boy player from when I was a kid. I was probably playing Grunty's Revenge on a TV a decade ago.
Oh, lucky.
So yeah, it was good to already have that set up.
Do you have to use the crappy GameCube controller D-pad though?
I actually think this game controls great with a stick, especially because like diagonal movement is pretty much constant. It feels way better on a stick than a D-pad. I do use the D-pad very slightly, like for blistering buttons, which is 9 buttons that you have to pack whack, and you have to be facing a specific direction. So I like to use the D-pad to face those directions. But other than that, I really just use the stick.
Okay.
In the end, I want to say that it's all personal preference.
Yeah, that makes sense. And me personally, I wouldn't play on an emulator because of the very slight input lag compared to a CRT. But yeah, I understand.
I use the stock Game Boy player, and supposedly that has input lag. So I don't know.
Oh,
I don't use the GBI or whatever. I think Game Boy Player stock software has like 1 frame lag or something. It doesn't really affect me, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. My laptop screen probably has quite a bit as well, so I can't play Banjo-Kazooie on it even with an N64 controller. Anyway, So, moving on. So, we're looking at kind of what's been found since your Taz, Blaze. So, maybe we'll go into talking about what Go-Go's doing with 100%, and then we'll come back and talk about how low you think any percent might go now.
Yeah, I'm thinking at this point I still want to make a version 2 of my task, but I'd wait until his is done, and then I can kind of use his as a reference for some parts, parts where we're collecting the same things. Like, it's kind of weird, but they can build off of each other in most ways, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good to have a reference.
I want to say that the first 2 levels are basically the same, apart from a few notes and the honeycombs.
Yeah, you basically 100% them in any percent, yeah.
Yeah.
So
we could talk a little bit about what could be improved in the any percent task, because I know that Blaze mentioned that he had only found super jumps near the end of his task, so definitely using super jumps in the first part of his task definitely would save time. I already have fun with doing super jumps everywhere in the first 3 levels.
all right.
Percent is more restrictive.
Yeah. So when did you find super jumps, Blaze? What level were you up to?
I think I'd done some by accident, actually, earlier on. Especially there's one jump in Bad Magic Bayou in the Vapor Scrubs area. There's a jump where you really were supposed to use Feathery Flap, but you can barely make it in Talon Trot. And I noticed my speed going above Talon Trot speed, but I didn't really look further into it. That jump, actually, I think in real time, you need a little bit of a super jump speed to make it. Like, you do have to jump really close to the edge to make it in real time. So that's funny. That we've been using it this whole time, and it's like, that jump did seem like, wow, you go kind of fast in that jump slightly. And that's why, because you're jumping at the very edge of water.
Does it have to be a frame before you reach the edge, or can it be a few frames before?
Yeah, it can be a few frames before. I just think you wouldn't get as much speed. And then in real time, you'd still be holding right on your stick or whatever the entire time. So you'd also lose the speed that way. But the little boost you get as you're over the water it helps make the jump successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it was only in Spiller's Harbor when I was going from the boat back to the mainland, because Go-Go will be using, there's a pipe that kind of warps you to the mainland, but there's a hollow honeycomb inside of it. And in any percent, we don't touch any hollow honeycombs, because the first time you touch one, you get a really long cutscene explaining what they are. So you can't touch them, so you can't use this shortcut to the mainland. And so I had to figure out a way to jump from the boat to the mainland. And that was when I realized about how jumping across the water was behaving really weirdly, especially if I let go of all my inputs. I started gaining like even more speed, and that was kind of when I realized it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Spiller's Harbor, that's the second to last level, isn't it?
Yeah. The 4th out of 5.
Yeah. Okay. So, how much time do you reckon it could save if you had used them in the first 3?
It's pretty situational, so I'm not sure. It's nothing too major. There's no like major skips. The gazebo jump is a bit more of a time saver, but even that's not that much. So there's nothing that crazy. It's just really optimizing a few frames or a few seconds.
If I had to guess, I would say that the time save for all 3 levels combined would probably be between 30 seconds and a full minute.
That much?
After all, in some places I was able to go close to the double of what you're supposed to go.
Yeah, especially in like Spiral Mountain movement, there's some really good spots.
Yeah. And let's not forget that in the case of super jumps, it's not like you lose all of your speed instantly as soon as you go back on land. There are some techniques to actually preserve your speed for a fairly long time.
Yeah, like alternating your direction, right? I think that would still help it, because it's basically like it naturally wants to decelerate, but it decelerates more the longer you hold a specific direction, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if you had figured out the timing, but I figured out that it's every 8 frames or so that decelerate you, so I only alternate speed every 8 frames or so.
I'm not sure about that at all. So that sounds like it would be very helpful.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I could show you after that. No. But yeah, you lose speed slightly faster if you alternate every frame, but if you switch every 8 frames or so, like if let's say that you want to go right, every 8 frame or so you put a down right input for exactly 1 frame, then return to right. It would be the optimal way to conserve the speed.
Oh, and that would also help you with angles.
Yeah.
Although in some cases you'd still want to alternate, maybe. Like, with the 8-directional movement, you only have like increments of 45 degrees.
Yeah.
But when I was super jumping and like alternating 2 directions every other frame, it basically let me have like a 22-degree super jump, which, especially for like the lava jump, that was like exactly what I needed, which was interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. When you don't get a line at some point, it's going to be better to just alternate.
Fascinating stuff. Some live Tazzing discoveries here.
Well, it sounds like he already knew. That's why I'm waiting for him to finish his, and then maybe he'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, Go-Go, you reckon 20 or 30 seconds maybe save with super jumps? I guess we'll find out. So what else has been found since any %? Are there any other time saves?
So, Blaze mentioned the gazebo jump. It is essentially the same way as you would do the Klungo skip that we mentioned earlier, except in Spiller's Arbor, there's like a bunch of switches that you need to activate to spawn one spring pad that is on top of a gazebo. And
No, it's just one switch. You're thinking of the sandcastle area.
It's only one switch. Getting there, I guess in 100% it wouldn't matter. In any percent it matters even more because you don't have to go near the area for the switch. But mainly the time save comes from the cutscene of the camera scrolling back and forth between the spring pad and the switch just to show you like where the spring pad is.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of cutscenes like that. It does a slow pan over to what you're changing, and it's terrible.
Yeah, and it's estimated that it would save between 15 and 20 seconds.
In what category?
I believe it would be around the same, actually, for both categories, despite me being said that, having said that you wouldn't go there in any percent, because in 100%, you still need to go there, but in the same area,
there's notes and such.
In the same area, there's the g0goTBC that actually spawns that you would need to collect to take a detour otherwise to get it. But since you can go on the gazebo at any point. By the way, on the gazebo, there's a switch that spawns a Jiggy. But you can just collect the g0goTBC on the way to the Jiggy that you get from pressing the switch on top of the gazebo, saving.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, so you go and get the silver coin for the slide during your first visit there, but you don't have to bother with the timed Jiggy yet. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. I thought that it would have been different between categories. It was fascinating stuff.
The way that it affects routing is different in both categories, but...
Yeah, because 100% has to make 2 visits to Spiller. Yeah, because you have to go there once to do the slide, but then you have to go there again after you've gotten all the Jinjos, basically. But in any percent, you don't get the g0goTBC, so you only make 1 trip there. And you don't do the slide either.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Are there any other things that could be improved in any percent, do you think?
Yeah, aside from implementing that, because that's like the only other place we've thought of where the egg knockback can actually work. And it barely works, too, because we're shooting an egg and enemy that's barely off-screen horizontally. So you have way less time for the egg to travel than when you're doing the Klungo skip and the egg's going downwards and you're colliding with the shield. In this case, the enemy has to be in that range where the egg actually collides with the enemy. It's not too off-screen. So it's really tough to find spots where the egg knockback can be used, and there's no other shock spring height things where there's like an enemy nearby that you can do that on. So there's not really any other uses of that. So I think it'd just be mostly general movement.
Well,
and there is one other thing. There's the rat area. You can get up to the rat area without going in the lower area. But you'd have to skip the 3 notes that are in the lower area, so that's not for 100%. But it's a possible time save in any percent if there's a faster 3 notes to get.
Alright, so probably 30, 40 seconds, you reckon it would save overall, these tricks?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
A lot of the input could be reused, luckily, because like when you enter an area, your position gets put in a specific place. I don't think it saves subpixels when you enter a loading zone, does it? I don't think so.
It should not. I don't believe so.
So for a lot of rooms, I could just use the same input if I don't have anything to improve upon, and the only thing that could be different is enemy RNG, pretty much. So it won't be too bad to update it, probably.
Yeah. And one thing that I was going to mention is for that gazebo jump, it is done RTA only by me.
Yeah, I've gotten it a couple times when I was figuring it out, but I don't know if I'd go for it in a run.
Yeah,
it would take so many attempts, you just lose time compared to just going and hitting the switch normally, unless you get it really fast.
Yeah, let's say that it's only a wall record only strat.
Is it in the world record? I forget.
It is in the any percent wall record.
Mm.
That's the footage that the viewers would have seen just then. That was from Go-Go's run as well.
Nice.
Yes.
But sadly, it's not
impressive.
in the Sadly, it's not in the 100% wall record, as the wall record was set before that trick was found.
And another thing we haven't mentioned is real-time running this game is hell because of the quiz at the end, where
really?
you need 0 mini games.
Oh yeah,
And you have, 7 questions you have to answer, right?
yeah, 7.
So any of those 7 questions, instead of just being a quick trivia question, can force you to play a mini game, and those mini games can take like 30 seconds to over a minute. And so if you're going for world records, you basically you're trying to reach the mini games because 90% of runs are just going to die there.
Oh, that's brutal.
So you're trying to get as good of pace as you can, entering the final boss, and keep it. And so, like, I could have a better any percent time. I could have a better 100% time, but it's like, is the game going to let me have one?
Yeah.
I got a 0 mini game run. Okay, I'm done. That's it. That's the one. That's it.
That's why Tazzing is so good.
Yeah, exactly. But then you've got to test the RNG manipulation, which I guess we could talk now about the RNG manipulation for this game and how it's awful.
Yeah, one thing while we're on the
it's not
mini
the worst.
games, though, because there are image squares, aren't there? As well.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not squares, but yeah, there's a few different types of questions.
Sorry for my Banjo-Kazooie lingo, but yeah, you have image questions. Would it be faster to manipulate away all of those? Is that even possible to do?
Yeah, in my any percent task, I did manipulate to have the best answers, the best questions I could find among the options I had, because you don't have any way to manipulate the questions once you're in the quiz. One easy way to manipulate it before the quiz is when you shoot an egg, that advances RNG. So since I'm already shooting eggs for the skip, if I shoot an extra one, that would change what quiz I got. And you can also jump, and jumping advances RNG because there's like 2 jump sound effects, so it has to choose which one. I think that's why. So I can jump and shoot extra eggs, and that changed what quiz I got, but I only had so many options. But yeah, I did. I think there's like music questions, location questions, and enemy name questions. I think enemy name was probably the quickest. Or if it's a quick sound effect, because it could be a sound effect or it could be a music track, and like music track is the worst. So I did optimize it, but it's not a wait an extra frame to answer and you'll get a different question deal. It's not like that.
Yeah.
But it's not a big deal.
But let's not forget that's for the quiz RNG, but in general, there is quite a few instances where you want to manipulate the RNG in this game while actually doing movement. And that can be tricky since you're in talent trot for most of the movement. I don't think there's any way to actually manipulate RNG from when you're in talent trot. Jumping in talent trot.
Yeah. It only has 1 sound effect. It's just a bree, bree, bree.
Yeah.
Banjo has like 2 kind of sounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no way to manipulate it without losing time.
Yeah, so you pretty much need to be creative in how you want to affect your movement in order to lose the least amount of time to get the good luck.
Like the best time to manipulate RNG is usually in a Klungo fight, because the Klungo fights are auto-scrollers. So you can do whatever the heck you want while you're waiting for him to become vulnerable.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's more of a kind of a macro scale RNG thing rather than a, frame perfect timing RNG thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, because that's harder to manipulate.
Well,
usually.
It depends how you look at it, though, because for RTA, that could be better. I could see... I'm not sure if you guys would agree with this, but I could see you doing some crazy jump counting and egg shot counting to do RNG manipulation.
Well, yeah,
Nice.
unfortunately, I'm pretty sure... I'm not 100% sure. I should try it someday. I remember testing when you start a new game. I had an input file. I start a new game. I start doing the input file, and the enemy locations would be completely different if I delayed starting my game. I think it might be going per frame on the title screen, which would pretty much instantly eliminate any chance of anything. And then enemies call RNG each time they move or bounce around, which they can do off screen before you realize it. So your movement would have to be perfectly the same, and saving the game and soft resetting is super duper slow, so you can't get back if you lose it. So there's not really any chance.
Okay, so even if you save and quit to RNG manipulate the quiz, if you could, it probably wouldn't save any time because it's so slow. Is that right?
It would be slower than zero mini games naturally, obviously, if we even had a way to manipulate it.
Yeah.
If I would say that it probably would even be slower than one mini game if you get one of the fastest mini games.
Yeah, you really have to wait through, the rare logo falling down and gruntlings attacking. There's this little animation at the start it's too lengthy.
Yeah.
Rare in their decadent intros. They love it.
Yeah, because Banjo-Tooie, you have to try to save and quit whenever you can, just because that lets you skip the intro instead of resetting. It's that kind of thing.
Classic Rare. Alright, so that's pretty interesting. Was there anything else you wanted to add about the RNG, guys, or should we move on from that?
I think we are done with the RNG talk.
Yeah. Because that's something a lot of people wonder about TASing, is how can you manipulate RNG? I guess in this case, as we discussed, it's sort of on a macro scale. Just do things that use the RNG.
Yeah, it definitely depends per game. But yeah, in this case, jumping and egg shooting's good. And it's nice in the beginning of the game, because as long as you don't change direction in midair, jumping does not cost you any speed. So if you're on a straightaway, you can do little tiny hops, and that will change how the gruntlings move around if you're trying to get a gruntling in a specific spot. And then each time they change direction, they call it. So if you manipulate them to run into a wall and bounce into it, that'll advance it another time. That's more variance. And you could jump before they hit the wall, and then they'll bounce a different direction. So there's a lot of ways to manipulate it early, but then once you're in Talon Trot, you're kind of screwed. But luckily there's not so much having to manipulate enemies at that point, because you can just jump over them or run around them.
Yeah, and I imagine
It's
it
only
wouldn't be super important until the quiz, really.
Yeah. And then for us, once we want to call RNG, it's basically trial and error. If we don't get the thing the first try.
Yeah, there's some mini-game patterns that matter. That's the main thing we want to manipulate. Other than enemies just not being on a note. But that's usually easy to manipulate away.
Yeah.
Very good. So I think we should move on to talking about the upcoming 100% Taz now. So Go-Go, you're working on this. You mentioned that you're about halfway through it.
Yeah.
How long have you been working on it for?
I want to say that I can remember that the first time I posted that I wanted to do it. I think it might have been last September, last October. I don't remember. But let's say that I've been taking lots of breaks lately due to the fact that, I don't know, it can be tiring sometimes, and I also like to do real life speedruns at the same time, so I do come and go with the tasking.
Okay. So probably like 4 or 5 months you've been working on it. And do you know roughly when you think it'll be done?
Hopefully this summer would be a good time for it to be done.
Ah, yeah. That'll be good. Good summer treat.
Yeah.
So is there any stuff that's specific to 100% that we haven't already discussed when talking about any percent?
I don't think so, actually. Outside the fact that we do need to get all the things in the route will be different.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I played Grunty's Revenge, I have to admit. What does it look like between any percent and 100%? So what is the minimum requirements for any percent compared to the totals?
So for any percent, you need 50 out of the 60 jiggies in the game, and the last move that we get in any percent is Ice Eggs, which I believe is
410.
410 out of 600 notes.
Yeah. So notes are super lenient, but jiggies are not so lenient.
Yeah, so we basically skip the very slow jiggies in the game.
It's basically like 3 slow mini games, 2 Jinjo jiggies, and then like 5. We skip a Klungo fight. We have to skip the jiggies that would require the Klungo fight. Basically that.
Yeah, and 5 of them are actually in the last level. So
Freezing Furnace does not get much love in any percent.
Oh,
yeah.
Freezing Furnace.
Yeah, since you don't do Klungo, since it's slow, you don't do any of the tank jiggies. Since it's slow, you don't do the octopus section in that level, since there's no point in transforming, since it's too slow for that one.
Yeah, transforming is one of the slowest cutscenes you can do, so it really has to matter.
Yeah. And then the Jinjo jiggies require some transformations to get, so can't get that either.
Okay. So lots of nice cutscenes and minigames and note collecting.
Yeah, but don't worry.
That's why I think any percent's better. But
I feel the same way about Banjo-Kazooie. But on the other hand, I do like 100% in terms of routing, because it's sort of like you have to get everything, so there's no cheating and saying, oh, I don't want to get that G, I don't like it very much.
Yeah.
Well,
I would say that I prefer 100%, not because you do these awesome mini games that take a minute, but because mainly in the last levels, the health management becomes a lot harder as in any percent, these levels become really short, and you skip some of the challenge in trying to stay alive in these levels.
Do you have
as well as some cool platforming?
Do you have to turn in your health in 100% or not? Because
no,
is it like 2?
We're at 4 health.
Far out. That's brutal.
4 health the entire game. Yeah. And most enemies starting in like level 2, they do 2 damage. So it's actually just 2 hits.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Oh, far out.
And let's not forget that falling in the lava and freezing furnace actually deals 3 damage.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Real.
Luckily, you don't have to fall in the lava to do anything, so you're encouraged to not do that. But yeah.
Yeah, and then the green goo, I believe it's 4 health, so it's a one shot if you fall in there.
Wow.
And then there's the blistering buttons room where you have to hit the 9 switches to spell Gruntilda, all while you're continually taking damage on a time interval. So you actually luckily there's 4 honeycombs in that room. So you actually have to pick up health to complete that with 4 health.
Yeah.
Unless you're really good.
You used a super jump to skip needing an extra health as well, didn't you, Blaze?
In blistering buttons?
Maybe a little bit. It was really close. I might have done that in the tasks.
Yeah, in the tasks.
Of course, in the tasks, we can do a diagonal pack wax. In real time, it's really, really hard to stop in place facing diagonally, and you have to be standing in place to use a pack whack. So we just do the 4 main directions. It's really hard to actually face diagonally, unfortunately.
Because let's say that you want to face down right, you need to release down and right on the exact same frame.
Oh,
is it frame perfect? Damn, I didn't know that. There actually is a shot where you have to shoot an egg diagonally, but you can do it while moving upright. You don't have to stop in place necessarily. Although if you walk too far, you walk into lava. So that's a hard shot. Because it has to be diagonally.
And then let's not forget that in freezing furnace, once you're at low HP because of the blistering buttons, I'm crazy enough to take damage boost off of the enemies in that area just to go a tiny bit faster. As in order to go through a small hallway, you need to use gold feathers, but using gold feathers is slow, so I prefer to damage boost.
Yeah. I think 100% was done with 6 health before you started it, wasn't it?
Yeah, and any person used to be done with 5 just for the extra safety.
Yeah, but I went down to 4 myself because so there's 2 parts with collecting the honeycombs that makes it slow in any percent. There's the first time you pick one up, you get that cutscene about them, but then there's also having to enter Honeybee's hive and talk to her and actually get the upgrade. And in 100%, you leave the first level with enough honeycombs to have 6 health, and then you walk on top of Honeybee's hive. So I used to just fall down, dip in there real quick, get 6 health. Why not? I'm already here. I've got the 4 health, the 4 hollow honeycombs for the 2 health.
Yeah.
But Go-Go decided, let's just save that 10 seconds and be at 4 health the entire 100% run. So that's how that is now. But in any percent, it is definitely easy to have 2 honeycombs without really losing any time collecting them, aside from the cutscene for collecting one. So 5 health in any percent is a lot safer, since that means 3 hits for the most part for most enemies.
Yeah, so you would lose 10 seconds from the first honeycomb in any percent, plus I believe 13 seconds from turning them in.
That is quicker than I thought it would be for turning them in, actually.
Yeah, because you're literally on top of her hive. So yeah.
I thought Rare would have put a more elaborate cutscene in there or something.
No, you just talk to her real quick.
That's good.
It's give me the health. Okay.
Unfortunately, there's no text skipping, because that would be amazing. And there's not even, you have to mash A. You can't even use the B button to advance text, which is annoying.
Yeah.
Oh,
it has to be A.
well, we'll say that the text skipping in this game is fairly good because since the very beginning of the run, we actually turn on the fast text speed, so the text just goes really fast.
It's one character a second, but it's still like, man, I wish I could just press B and close out of this. Because the technology is there. Like, if you reread text from like a molehill, you can press B to instantly close the box. And it's like, why can't all the boxes do that? You've got it programmed. It's so annoying.
You gotta make sure you know how to dive, for example.
You gotta know how to shake off the Gremuloids.
Yeah.
Longest text box in the game for that.
Ah, I remember playing it casually and I didn't know how to do that. I must not have read the text box.
It's the Bill Drill text box.
What?
And it says to shake off the Gremuloids, you have to mash the control pad.
Yeah, you have to like rotate quickly.
Yeah.
I remember having to Google that one, but that was kind of hard back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Let's say that. Here's a funny example of like a minor difference. With a joystick, it would just be way faster to just do a full turn of the joystick just to get as many angle changes as possible. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess there's different advantages for joystick versus D-pad. I know I'd personally probably use D-pad, but I don't know. I do that even for like Crash Bandicoot games and stuff.
Yeah, on keyboard it's easier to mash two arrow keys.
Can you just go back and forth for those Gremloid things?
Yeah, it's just like a change in direction. It doesn't have to be a circle, I don't think.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah. There's actually something funny about the Gremuloid thing. There's a mobile port of Grunty's Revenge, which should not be mentioned too much, because it's... I mean, they did what they could, but it does not control well on a phone, that's for sure. But they cut a lot of content, so there is no Bill Drill, but there's still a molehill, and all the molehill does is teach you how to get Gremuloids off of you. So you don't even learn a move from it. It's very silly. But it's weird that they combined that hint with the Bill Drill molehill. But anyway, yeah.
I guess it's got to go somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no signposts, so there's just Bozai and NPCs.
Yeah. Alrighty, so 100%. I'm looking forward to it. Be sure to check back in this summer. Hopefully, Go will have it done. Go,
he's doing a lot of re-records.
How many re-records?
He's doing it more optimized than me.
How many is that?
I think he's not here right now.
Go-Go's gone. Alright. Well, anyway, yeah, so that's 100% sort of covered. And Go did a 10 Jiggies Taz in 2017. Do you know much about that one, Blaze?
I don't think I've seen that, but 10 Jiggies is just like the SRL races where the first recorded any percent times are. The people that were racing any percent, they started with 10 Jiggies races, and this is back when, like, to be on the SRL front page, you had to do like a ton of races, but like the length of time didn't really matter, just the number of races mattered. So that's where Mumbo's Mountain Trotless came from, is just people spamming races to try to be on SRL front page. So those people did 10 Jiggies, and Go decided to modernize it And 10 jiggies is silly because like you'd think that means like complete the first level 100%, right? But no, we can get like 6 from the first level and get the other 4 from Spiral Mountain, the hub area. So the route's actually pretty cool. We get a Jiggy that's supposed to require Wonder Wing because there's like a ton of enemies on a narrow path, but you can jump to barely avoid them and get the Jiggy with just rolling. You don't even need Kazooie. You don't get Kazooie in that category because Kazooie's in the second level. So it's pretty crazy to end with a Jiggy that's supposed to require a move from World 4. And it's faster than the Cliff Farm Jiggies. But I don't know anything about the tasks. It's just like a meme thing.
Yeah. Let's say that I only made that only to get used like Task Studio, as it was pretty much the first run that I've made with that.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. It was just to get familiar with the tools. That's a great idea. Because the start of my any % task is the most unoptimized part, probably, because that was the first time I was doing anything with a task setting. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So basically I did a run of a category that nobody cares about except me and maybe Blaze.
It's a cool route. It's a silly idea. You earned it. It's on the speedrun leaderboard because he said if he got sub-hour within like the next week, would I make it a miscellaneous category? And I'm like, okay, sure, you're not getting sub-hour. And then so
the day after
he earned it. And Jumpy Left got really mad that it was on there. But anyway.
Very good. So I will link that Taz in the description as well. It's probably worth a watch, being fairly recent.
I should probably watch it.
Yep.
Yeah. You'll see that it may not be as broken like the any % and 100% look like, since we just stuck with Banjo the whole time, so there's not a whole lot of options, but it's definitely a cool thing to watch.
And are there any super jumps in that? Because you can super jump as Banjo, can't you?
There's 2 super jumps at the very end, and that's it.
Oh, during the Wonder Wing Jiggy?
Yeah.
Getting there, basically? That makes sense. Yeah, there's the big water area in Spiral Mountain that you'd have to jump across normally. And mostly swim through.
That way you'll be able to see what was my first task.
Very good. So I think that wraps up Grunty's Revenge talk very nicely, and really a little mini series on the Banjo-Kazooie series. Unfortunately, there was no Tui episode because emulation is not great for that still, so there's not many people looking at Tazzing it. And I'm sorry, Blaze, but there won't be a Nuts and Bolts episode. I know you love that game so much.
It was fun casually, but it has its flaws. I like to say if you have difficulty staying upright in a driving game, it's probably not a good driving game. I don't know. It's kind of hard just to drive. I don't know.
Was it you that was speedrunning Nuts and Bolts, Blaze, or am I getting you confused with someone else?
Well, Mad Taz is the primary runner.
Yes.
And then Psycho is second place. I did run it basically for April Fools once. I got like sub 3 hours, which isn't that good, but it was better than I expected. Just to have a run of every Banjo game, just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
And there's, I guess, Banjo Pilot as well. I think.
Yeah, Banjo Pilot would actually be interesting to task now, because Go-Go actually found tech in that game that makes it not terrible to run. Well, it is terrible to run, but it's interesting. He can talk about that if he wants.
Oh yeah. Basically, in Banjo-Pilot, you're driving in a plane, and basically this game has full 3D movement in which you can turn left and right, but you can also go up and down on the track. And when you go up, you go slightly slower, and when you go down, you go slightly faster. And basically what I found is that if you are looking down while being against a ground, it basically takes a while before you actually bonk on the ground. And so basically you could actually just look down until just before you bonk, release down for a little bit, then press up just a little bit, since you when you're on the ground you cannot look on the ground right after, and then look, and then once you're up a bit you can just look down for a while before bonking, and that actually makes so that you actually go slightly faster than if you were not doing anything.
Yeah, because it's like the intention is you go up, you gain height, but you lose speed. And then that's like potential speed to gain when you lose height, you speed up. But if you're looking down at the ground, you gain speed without losing height. So you get a net positive out of it by just looking down as much as you can into the ground. And it makes it a lot more engaging during straightaways, because it used to be you're just holding A and turning. It's like, wow, this is not interesting. But now you're going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Then
Yeah.
it would be interesting to tasks, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist. There's too many variables in a racing game for my tastes. I don't know.
If I had to guess, I would say that in the 100% category that lasts for about 3 hours and a half, you'd save 10 to 15 minutes from this new tech.
Interesting. That's surprising how much it is.
Yeah.
Yes, especially with the fastest character bottles. It's crazy. I was actually able to beat some IL records with the land boosting, like on cyberscore.co.uk or something.
Oh.
So clearly no one knew about it until now, because those are pretty optimized records, and I was just able to beat them with kind of sloppy runs, but with the land boosting.
Oh, yeah.
And then Go-Go let me have the record, because he took the record from me, and then I took it back, and he just kind of let me have it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has interest in taking it back.
Maybe sometimes, like, I only wanted to see, like, I wanted to, like, try to run, like, Banjo-Pilot just because it looked like a cool game, but then I played it and I was like, eh.
Yeah, you see, like, Diddy Kong Racing has TT doing these crazy skids and doing 20-second laps, and this Banjo-Pilot does not have that at all.
Yeah, you take DKR and you remove most of the challenge, and you get Banjo-Pilot pretty much.
Correction, Banjo-Pilot doesn't have that yet. You never know what could happen.
I don't know.
I've never played it, so I have no idea, but...
Well, one thing is we wipe the save file, because there's actually a way to wipe it. Like, Diddy Kong Racing wouldn't be as good if they didn't use TT, but they allow it because it's a permanent cart unlock. But in Banjo-Pilot, any percent you do the run as Banjo, and that kind of makes it more boring. In 100%, you unlock bottles, and bottles is crazy fast.
Yeah.
Like, too fast, almost. And the turning is too sharp. It's like, oh my god.
Like, yeah, like, you do the first, like, hour or so as Banjo, and it's, like, the hardest part of the run, since you go barely faster than all of your opponents, and then you switch to bottles, and
you have to come in first in 100%. Yeah. You don't have to come in first in any percent, actually, so that makes it easier.
Yeah, and then you switch to bottles, and you can just outlap your opponents like crazy.
Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. But I'm glad there's tech now, because I remember, like a really long time ago, I think Mittens was talking about Tazzing it or something, but he said that it's basically an auto-scroller when you Tazz it. So that new tech is very exciting to hear about. Maybe we will see a
land
Tazz.
boosting would be interesting now.
Yeah, I threw the idea to Mittens since I knew that he was gonna do that, but I haven't heard anything from him. So Blaze,
It might
when
still
are
be an
you gonna do
auto-scroll.
that?
I don't know. It might still be kind of auto-scrollery because it might just be hold down the max amount of frames, and then up one frame, and then down again. Like, there might still be a pattern that basically makes it an auto-scroller, because none of that has an effect on your turning. So you'd still be turning as sharp as you can while doing the land boosting. So it might still be kind of auto-scrollery.
Yeah, who knows?
Alright, well, that's a fun little side tangent into Banjo Pilot for all the Banjo Pilot fans.
Yeah, talking to you, Jax. Jaquez. Come back.
I didn't
He had the
realize
record.
they ran Banjo Pilot.
Yeah, he had the record when I started Grunty's Revenge. It was Jaquez.
Doesn't he do a lot of Crash?
Yeah, that was his main thing. I don't know if he's still doing things.
Interesting. It's fun seeing all these crossovers.
Yeah, it is.
Alrighty, so Go-Go, where can we find you, and what projects are you up to these days?
All right, so if you want to see me, you can just check me on Twitch, twitch.tbc. The first was a 0. Don't forget that.
I always forget
You
if it's
cut
the
out
first
there
or
when
the
you
second.
said that, Go-Go. You cut out there when you said that. You might want to say your Twitch again.
Okay, it's twitch.tv/g0goTBC. And then if you want to contact me, I also have some videos on YouTube, though I don't really upload regularly. It's mainly strats and runs and stuff that you'll find there. But if you want to contact me, best way to do that is probably via Discord, same name, or Twitch.
Mm-hmm. And you're
And
in
if you
the
want-
Tool Assisted Podcast Discord as well. And
Yeah.
the Banjo-Kazooie Discord.
Oh yeah, you can find me there.
Good. And how about you, Blaze?
I'm on twitch.tv/Blazephlozard. And right now I've been working on Pokemon TCG 2. Right now I'm doing a fully RNG manipulated route, which I spent like a month routing it on stream, which was pretty fun. It's all about doing as few deck edits as possible and getting turn 1 wins and feeling super overpowered. It's and TAS-wise, I've also done a trading card game, TAS, which is like 21 minutes. I've done a couple others, like just really meme stuff other than the Grunty's Revenge and TCG, though.
Yeah,
Not sure what I'll do next, TAS-wise,
yeah,
aside from maybe any % version 2.
yeah. Maybe I should precise what I stream too. Mainly what I stream is Banjo-Kazooie, Grunty's Revenge. Recently I've been playing some Banjo Dreamy, which is a ROM hack of Banjo-Kazooie. And in
It's
fact, the
also
only
really
one-
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to play all the Banjo games, Blaze. Why not play that?
Yeah, I mean, I did beat it without save states, but sure had a few deaths. I don't know if I could eliminate enough deaths for it to be a good run at all. I don't know. Although I guess that any percent with the glitch, because in Banjo Dreamy he changed how the demo works, in a way that lets you enter a file in the demo with like all the moves. So that's pretty good for an any percent category.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of B clipping. So that sounds fun, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like 100% intended is way hard.
Yeah. We have this category that is put on speedrun.com, but nobody has been up to the challenge yet. Especially since nobody has routed the 100% category, but with glitches. Only the any percent categories.
Nobody's routed it yet. Uh-huh.
Yeah, not yet.
Exactly.
But I feel like in the next months it will be routed. At least the 100% category with glitches.
Of course, being a ROM hack, it's harder to play it on console, so it might have less audience because of that. Although it seems like a lot of the top runners have EverDrives. So honestly, some of them should try it out on EverDrive. I'm not sure if it'd be laggy. It was super laggy on Project 64.
It's pretty laggy on console, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Dreamy? Yeah, damn. That might be that's a hard thing to deal with in like the space level and stuff.
It's only on some levels that it's laggy, like that beach level. But some levels are right.
And let's not forget that we also split the N64 and MU run simply because even though the N64 is very laggy, it's faster than MU due to the fact that in World 4 you can actually clip through a wall as a B and it allows you to beat the whole level.
Oh, is that clip because of lag or because of a collision thing? Or is it because of the extra speed from lag? Do you know?
I think it's because of lag, but I could be wrong.
What happens? Does the clip only work on console?
It only works on console, yeah.
Yeah, well that could be like NTSC RBA as well in normal Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, it could be.
And that's not a lag thing, I think that is a collision thing. Because I don't think console even lags there.
Yeah, of course, like the Spiral Mountain backflip. I remember Hyper having trouble with that. They had to like update BizHawk just to make the Spiral Mountain backflip work. So obviously there's some emulation collision oddities with the Banjo games.
Emulation is hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Alright, very good. All the details for where to find Go-Go and Blaze will be in the description as well. Before we go, are there any Tazes that you would want to recommend people watch Go-Go?
If I had to say, any of the challenge categories that of Ocarina of Time, I find them really interesting to watch, like 100% in 3 pauses, all dungeons in 2 pauses, all dungeons, no doors. Those are all 3 runs that I really suggest to watch. Even though 2 of them are low optimization demonstrations, it's a really fun watch.
Yeah, so you'll have to search for Lotad for some of those rather than Taz. And I would agree, the commentary especially on those is really good.
Yeah.
How about you, Blaze? Any Tazes?
I definitely recommend like the Banjo-Kazooie TAS and the Donkey Kong 64 TAS, just because I'm super familiar with those games, and they really did a good job. Especially Ring Rush, it's impressive how he didn't use dirty SRAM for the Donkey Kong 64 TAS, and that really changes the route, but it's still super fast getting those couple banana fairies with the clean SRAM. I'm a big fan of the Family Feud TAS, which is not really about speed, but is solely about entertainment, and it abuses the word recognition system in Family Feud to answer complete nonsense. I really like that abusing of it. Other than that, I mean, I don't know. Just the standard really good tasks. I don't know.
Good.
0 star,
Yeah, 0 star, 1 key.
120 star, 70 star, whatever. All the stars.
I think the Family Feud TAS will be in the same vein as brain training, because that also tricked the recognition in sort of a different way. I did enjoy
The Brain Age?
Brain Age, yeah, not brain training. What am I thinking?
Brain Training might be its European name. Yeah, I mean, I think the Brain Age, the drawings are cool, but it's kind of like you can't visually see, like, oh, that's why it recognized that as a 7. Like, there's not that personal recognition of why this is working, while with the Family Feud tasks, the word recognition, it just looks for the letters in order, and you can put whatever nonsense in between the answer letters. And so it's fun to kind of see how the nonsense turned into the answer.
Yes.
For me. While the Brain Age just looks cool. But it's like, clearly you can draw whatever, and it can read it as whatever number, and it's not really, I don't know.
Yeah.
Another good one's Super Scribblenauts. That one's fun.
They did that at GDQ recently, didn't they? Or something.
I think so.
Scribblenauts, yeah. Cool. All right. Go. I think I cut you off about the Ocarina of Time TASs there. Did you have something else to say about those?
No, I think those are the main 3 that I would suggest.
Mm-hmm. Any others that you'd like? Any other TASs that we haven't said yet?
There's so many, it's hard to think of one of them in particular.
Yeah, it's a bit like that anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, like pretty much all the popular games now have a TAS.
Yeah.
Now that testing has grown in variety, in what do you call it, popularity over the past years.
Yeah, definitely. And I always say just pick a game that you know and then watch the TAS of that. That's going to give you the most enjoyment, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Another one I really like is Super Mario Land 2, where the player goes out of bounds, and the world map it's filled with like garbage blocks, but those blocks actually correspond to RAM address values being visually represented. And so you actually go to a specific block and break it, and it turns a RAM value to a 0, and that lets you beat the game, like reach the credits. Like, I think it's crazy to physically manipulate the game memory as the player out of bounds. Like, I think that's pretty cool. It's like kind of like ACE, arbitrary code execution, but it's less like you're actually physically just modifying the game variables. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I really like that one. I think it's in a few TASs that they do something like that, but that's the only one that I can think of where you can really see it on camera that they're doing that.
Yeah, they figured out something for Metroid Fusion, I think, but that's the camera gets locked. You can't actually see it, but they bomb some block.
Yeah, I think Super Metroid does something similar, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on the show, guys. It's been a real blast to talk to you about this, and I found out lots about the game.
No problem.
Yeah, and thanks, everyone, for listening. Catch you later.